third graders, welcome back to your TV classroom. Today is Friday, February 19th. That is actually very hard to say. You should try and say it. How are you today? How are you doing? What are your emotions feeling? I'm excited it's Friday. Mr. Kevin, are you excited it's Friday?
Yes, very excited. It's Friday.
Woo-woo. All right, friends. So what zone are you in today? How are you feeling? Rafa, how are you feeling today? Oh, you're in the green zone. Mr. Kevin, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm in the green zone too.
Why do you think you're in the green zone, Mr. Kevin?
Well, I had a nice evening last night.
Oh, good.
Very relaxing. Got good sleep.
Great.
Yeah. And you, Mrs. Wall?
I'm in the green zone. I also had a great night last night. Oliver was really funny at dinner, and he ate all his green beans.
Whoa.
So I don't know, some of you out there may have siblings that are like 2 years old. They can be really picky about their food, but he ate his entire dinner last night, and it was really great. And we had a great time as a family, and him and his dad, they made a fort out of his little climber, and they were playing with his toys underneath, and we were reading books, and we just had a really great family night last night. So
neat.
I woke up in the green zone today. Friends, make sure you share your feelings with someone else, and make sure you ask them how they're feeling. It really helps to think about others and make sure they're also okay. It somehow makes you more in the green zone, I find. So let's get going with Fact Fun Friday. Let's see how quickly you know these facts. What's the answer? You got it? Okay. What's the answer? Now there's two ways, it's 50, there's two ways you could figure this out. You could do, well, 5 times 5 is 25 and 25 plus 25 is 50. Or you can do, well, 5 groups of 10 is 50, because if I do 5 times 1, that's 5, and 5 times 0 is 0, and it's 50. Either way works. Ooh, what's 5 times 15 then? If 5 times 5 is 25, and 5 times 10 is 50, think about our decomposition of the number 15, 10 and 5, then what is 5 times 15? It's 75. Okay, if we have 5 groups of 4 tens, what is that going to be? Well, what would be 5 groups of 4? 21s. So what's 5 groups of 4 tens? 20 tens, which is the same as, you got it, 200. If 5 times 40 is 200 or 20 tens, then what's 5 times 400? It's going to be 20 what? 20 hundreds. Well, what number is 20 hundreds? Do you know? Well, there's 0 ones, there's 0 tens, and in 20 hundreds, there's no more hundreds, there's 2 thousands. Woo, that's a huge number. Let's see what we're going to do today. Today we are learning to solve word problems about area. We're back to some of these area models again. So we're using multiplication and division to solve problems about area. So we're going to run into problems today where we need to find the length, or we need to find the width, or we need to find the area. And I want you to think about what you know about multiplication. So when you multiply, you have the length and the width. So you have the two parts, the two factors, the length and the width. And you use multiplication to find the whole amount. But if you have the whole amount and either the length or the width, you can use division or the fact you know to help you find the other part of that equation, or the other factor. So let's see if we can figure out what it is we know. Do we know the length and the width or the total area? And what it is we're trying to find and then solve. So that's what I want you to think about when we're doing those story problems. What in this problem do I know? What information do I have? And what information am I trying to find? We're not going to use square tiles. We're just going to use dot pictures today to make a tiling model, which is an array. to represent and complete this multiplication fact. So Mr. Kevin, can you show my whiteboard? Because I know most of you don't have square tiles at home. So you can either use graph paper, but I'm guessing a lot of you don't have graph paper at home. So I'm just gonna use my whiteboard. And we're going to do 3 groups of something equals 15. So I'm gonna do one group here, one group here, one group here. So there's my 3 groups. I've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Complete the rest of it. Make it show 3 times something equals 15. Okay, it should look like this. So we know the 3 groups. We know the total area, 15. So we know the width. What are we trying to find? The length. What's our length? How many units is our length? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also say, I have 15, I'm dividing it into groups of 3, which is what we did. And I'm figuring out how many groups there are. It's the same model. It just depends on how you're using it, okay? Just like last time, how the models look the same, but then our words told us what we were trying to find. Great job. Let's take a look at our first problem. Mr. Kim, we can do just the full screen for this. For an art project, Sean uses colored squares of paper to tile a rectangle. Like, have you ever seen tile like on a floor or in a bathroom wall, and it's got the square tiles and it has that grout in between? So they're tiling using colored paper, okay, for an art project. So they're tiling a rectangle that has an area of 48 square inches. So these tiles must be a square inch. Each piece of paper is 1 square inch. He makes 6 rows. How long is the rectangle? Go ahead and take 2 minutes to solve this problem. Oh, wait. You know what we didn't do? We didn't do a 3-read. That wasn't very fair of me. We need a 3-read to make sure we understand it. I totally forgot. Mrs. Wally, focus, brain, focus. Here we go.
So that was like a 1-read?
It was like a 1-read. That was just a what's happening? We know what's happening. We've talked about that. Let's read again to find our question, friends. For an art project, Sean uses colored squares of paper to tile a rectangle that has an area of 48 square inches. Each piece of paper is 1 square inch. He makes 6 rows. How long is the rectangle? What's our question? Yes, how long is the rectangle? Okay, now let's read and find our information. Thank you for being patient with me, friends. This is my first recording of the day, and I think my brain is still waking up. For an art project, Sean uses colored squares of paper to tile a rectangle that has an area of 48 square inches. Each piece of paper is 1 square inch. He makes 6 rows. What in there is important information? Do I care about the color? Do I care about that it's an art project? Do I care that it's a rectangle? So we know we're going to have a rectangle. That gives us a clue. What else is important? Yeah, the area. Area of 48 square inches. Perfect. What else is important? That the paper is 1 square inch. Yep. And he makes 6 rows. So you're going to use that information. Now, I don't want you to get confused by this 1 square inch. That's just telling you that each of those tiles is 1 square inch. It's giving you the scale. So, go ahead. Now solve. Mr. Kevin, how long have we been going? Perfect, thank you. All right, friends. So let's take a look at some of the ways you could have solved this. Doesn't mean they're the only ways, but it's just an example of some of the ways. And what I want you to do is look at how you solve this problem and how the slide solved this problem and compare. How was it similar? How was it different? And did it work? You can use a drawing. We've used lots of drawings. This is what we call an area model, or an array made out of tile squares. Pretty cool, huh? I'm so glad we worked on those arrays so much earlier in the year. So you can draw a picture. Take a look at this picture. They have shown us in this picture that on this side, there are 6 rows, or 6 inches. Each of these is an inch because our squares are 1 inch. And they've said on this side, we don't know how many inches yet, but they made sure that the area was 48 square inches. So what equation could you write here to help you solve this problem? What do you think? Did you draw a model like this? Let's look and see how they used equations after drawing a model to help you. You can take notes about the problem. The rectangle has an area of 48 square inches. We kind of took verbal notes as we were going through and identifying the parts that were important in the problem. We said the 6 rows means the rectangle is 6 inches wide. So we have the width, right? So this rectangle is 6 inches wide. We have the area, but we don't have the length. The rectangle is blank inches long. We don't know. So you could use a multiplication fact or a division fact to solve this. The multiplication fact would look like this. 6 rows of something equals 48. Or it would look like this. 48 square inches divided into 6 rows equals, I'm not sure how many in each row. Or 48 square inches divided by a width of 6 equals, I don't know the length yet. How could you use the multiplication fact of 6 times 7 equals 42? Oh, we didn't find the solution. Silly Mrs. Wally. So what's the answer? Look back here at our model. How many were in each row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So our length is what? 8 inches. So 6 times 8 equals 48, and 48 divided by 6 equals 8. 8, 8, 8. I'm pretty sure our answer is 8 inches. Yes, Mr. Kevin?
Those are small tiles. It must be a dollhouse. If
Maybe, yeah. They're just really small little inch tiles. Or it could be some kind of pretty decoration, like have you ever seen like in a kitchen, Mr. Kevin, and they make the little like strip in the middle of the kitchen? I could see using inch tiles for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, friends. So how could you use the multiplication fact of 6 times 7, 6 times 7, to help you figure out this problem of 6 times something equals 48? Let's say you didn't know that it was 6 times 8. Let's say you just used an equation and you were trying to figure this out. How can you use this to help you solve that? Oh, 42 plus another group of 6 makes 48. So I have 6 groups of 7. So if I add another one to each group, that's going to be another group of 6 added. Now it's not going to be 6 groups of 7, it's going to be 6 groups of 8, and I'm going to get to 48. It's kind of like what we've done on the What's Missing Thursday. We've done this a few times. So you can use what you know about this fact to help you figure out how many groups of 6 make this, or how many in each group of 6 groups do we need to make this. Okay, here's another problem. Suppose Sean's rectangle has an area of 56 square inches and he makes 7 rows. Explain how you could use multiplication and division to find the length of his rectangle. Well, I've got 6 times 7 equals 42. So I'm going to reverse those because now I have 7 rows. So 7 rows of something equals 56. What could we do? We could figure out that, well, 7 groups of 6 is 42. So I add another group of 6, and that's 48. No, another group of 7, and that's 49. And another group of 7, and that's what? 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56. So I added 2 more groups. So it's not going to be 7 times 6 anymore. It's going to be 7 times 8. What if you use division? What could you use? 56 divided by 7 equals something. Could you do that? Could you take 56 and split it up into groups of 7? You could. I think this way is much faster. Our answer that was missing was 8. Okay. A walkway is made of square patio blocks. Each block is 1 square meter. That's a big block, but that's fine. There are 2 rows of blocks with 9 blocks in each row. What is the area of the walkway? Show your work. So what's happening here in this problem? Yeah, we've got a patio, and we've got blocks, and there's like a walkway. Okay, let's read and find the question. A walkway is made of square patio blocks. Each block is 1 square meter. There are 2 rows of blocks with 9 blocks in each row. What is the area of the walkway? Well, our question is, what is the area of the walkway? Now let's go and find our information. A walkway is made of square patio blocks. Each block is 1 square meter. There are 2 rows of blocks with 9 blocks in each row. What's our important information? We have 2 rows of blocks. We have 9 blocks in each row. And what's our unit? Each block is 1 square meter. So we know the length and the width is going to be in meters. Let's draw together and see if we can figure out how to solve this. So we know that there's going to be 2 and 9. So we know there's going to be 2 meters here, 2 meters here, and 9 meters here. What are we going to do to figure out the total area? Yeah, we're going to do length times width. So we're going to do 9 meters times 2 meters equals 18 square meters. So what is the area of the walkway? The area is 9 square meters. Awesome. Now I'm not 9. Oh, Mr. Kevin, thank you. Not 9. Friends, it's going to be one of those days, I think. 18 square meters, not 9, Mrs. Wally. I saw the 9 here and wrote 9. 18 square meters, just like our answer was right here.
That's okay, Mrs. Wally.
It's okay, it happens, right? Now, friends, we're not done, and I do not want to race through this. I think these problems are really important. So next time, we will continue on with this lesson. For your assignment today, what I would like you to do is come up with 2 or 3 scenarios on your own. Some where you're trying to find the area, some where you're trying to find the length, some where you're trying to find the width. Write those out and just practice. I just want you to practice it. If you would like to send it to us here at the TV Classroom, Mr. Kevin, can you tell them how they can do that?
Absolutely. You know, you could even take a measuring tape and do the interior of your bedroom.
You could. That would be so much fun. That
would be, and you can find out the area
of your bedroom.
And if you want to do that and send it to us, you could send it via email to tvclassroom@tacoma.k12.wa.us, or you could mail us something in the regular mail, and that's TV Classroom, 601 South 8th Street, Tacoma, Washington, 98405.
Thanks, Mr. Kevin. Now, friends, up next is your time with Ms. Osland. You need to make sure you have your ELA materials ready, your learning buddy, and yourself ready for her lesson. Have a great break, have a great time with Ms. Osland, and I will see you later. Bye.
Rules. 1. You have 10 seconds to pick your crewmate. 2. A new timer will appear with an exercise for the crewmate you picked. 3. You will get 10 points for each correct crewmate and exercise you choose. 4. If you pick the imposter, you will lose all your points. 5. See how many points you can get. Good luck.
third graders, welcome back from your break. We just had a really cool thing happen here at TV Classroom. Mr. Wood, your PE teacher, he was just here. He came to say hi and pick up some new equipment that I think you're going to enjoy. So that was really fun. Hey, thanks for grabbing your learning materials and being ready to go. Go ahead and put your packet and your pen off to the side. We won't need that, or your pencil. I have a pen. You have a pencil. Maybe you have a pen. I don't know. Whatever you have, put it off to the side. You can hold on to your learning buddy if they are going to help you focus. Now let's remind ourselves of our 3 personal standards that we agree to when we come together today and every day. Say this out loud. We will show respect, make good decisions, solve problems. We have been learning about Patricia Polacco as an author and an illustrator. And we learned that Patricia Polacco writes about the important people and events that are in her life. And we learned in Just Plain Fancy that she often wrote about people who have a culture that is different than hers. And we talked about how your culture are your habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations, and the group of people who share your habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. And Patricia Polacco wrote about people who have a different culture. For example, in Just Plain Fancy, she wrote about people who are Amish. And by reading her book, we learned a lot about that culture, those people who have the same habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. And she doesn't just write about them, but she celebrates them. And it was just amazing to read in that book, Just Plain Fancy. She has a common theme that she really honors these people and their lives. And she writes these stories so everyone can know and learn about them and the people who are important to her. She also wrote about, in Thank You, Mr. Falker, she wrote about a teacher named Mr. Falker. And another interesting piece of information about Patricia as a writer is that many of her books include a young character with an adult and how they interact, just like in Thank You, Mr. Falker. And it's just interesting. In fact, I have a quote that I'm going to read that Patricia Polacco gave in an interview. She said, "Personally, I feel that this is the most valuable experience in my life, having the wonder of knowing both children and elderly people." And I think that is one of the things that Patricia believes is so important, that as a writer, to write down the stories of important people in our lives. Today we're going to learn how writers use life experiences and the people we share those experiences with for their writing. And we're going to read a story called When Lightning Comes in a Jar. And it's a story about Patricia and her family, and they have what's called a family reunion. Say family reunion.
Family reunion.
Think about, what do you think you know about what a family reunion is? Take some think time. Turn and tell your learning buddy what you think you know about a family reunion. Rafa, I think I know that a family reunion is when a family, and not just like parents and kids or grandparents and kids, but aunts and uncles and cousins and second cousins and great aunts and great grandparents all come together for a big special like party because they haven't seen each other in a long time. Now, as we read When Lightning Comes in a Jar, we're going to notice about the special experience of Patricia Polacco's family all coming together for a barbecue. And I want you to think about, who are the adults in your life that you've shared experiences with that you could use for your writing? Have you been to a family reunion? What about your neighbors? What about the other adults? Maybe you have special teachers that you've had experiences with. Think about those as we read When Lightning Comes in a Jar. When Lightning Comes in a Jar by Patricia Polacco. Now this is a really interesting title, When Lightning Comes in a Jar. I'm really intrigued and wondering how you would get lightning into a jar. And it also made me think about the title, Just Plain Fancy, and how plain and fancy are opposites. and how she used the word plain to kind of describe the word fancy. It was just really creative how she uses that language. So, okay, let's look. What do you notice about the picture? Notice anything that's kind of been the same on a lot of her books? I noticed that it's really bright colors. A lot of the books that we've looked at, she includes really bright, vivid colors. It makes me think that this might be a happy memory that Patricia has from her childhood. Let's get reading. When lightning comes in a jar. Today is my family reunion. I can hardly wait. My dad's side of the family will come soon. It's been ages since I've seen them all. Before, our reunions were always at my grandma's house, but this year it's going to be at mine. I'm so anxious to see my cousins, especially Lydia and Sandy. They will be wearing the same colors that we always wear at family reunions. They wore them at our last reunion. How I remember that day. Grandma and I stood in her front window waiting for my relatives to come. I can't wait to see them all, I said to her. I know, she answered. Will there be Jell-O like there always is? I asked. Yes, she answered. And baseball and croquet like there always is? And bag races too. And will you tell stories like you always do? Might, Grandma said, looking up at the sky, and we might catch lightning in a jar. Lightning in a jar? I asked. This was new. Okay, already this has me thinking about a time when I was younger. I was a teenager, and we had a family reunion. It was my mom's side of the family. So my mom and her sisters and brothers, so lots of my aunts and uncles and cousins. And we also all wore the same colors. That was interesting. We all wore red and white to our family reunion. So that's a connection that I'm having. And my grandma was there as well. But we didn't have it at anyone's house. We had it at a local church because it had a bigger gathering space because there were a lot of us. I remember it raining, so it must have been a time of year when we couldn't have it outside. Okay, let's keep reading and noticing how Patricia tells this story of her as a young girl. She's interacting with an adult here. It's her grandma, and they must share this experience together. And then my relatives started driving up by the carload, one after another. Finally, the car I was waiting for rolled up, and my 5 cousins piled out. Sandy, Freddie, Billy, Lydia, and Carl. Sandy and Lydia and I squealed and ran for the porch swing, just like we always did. We held hands and pushed the swing with our bare feet. We told secrets that we had kept for a whole year. I told them about the lightning in a jar. When my dad called out, "Who's going to help unload these baskets from the car?" we shouted, "We will!" And we lugged baskets full and heavy to the tables in the maple grove. Wonderful how many Jell-O salad, wonderful. Reread. Wonder how many Jell-O salads there will be? My cousin Freddie asked. Gazillions, there always are, my cousin Billy answered. Sure enough, there were gazillions. They jumped and shook every time we bumped the table. They seemed alive. Bet there will be as many meatloafs too, my brother chimed in. There they were. I'm going to reread that. That was choppy. There they were as we unpacked them. Zillions of meatloafs. They were all different too. Each auntie had her own recipe, including Aunt Bertha, who made one with a hard-boiled egg in the middle. When we cut it, there was a perfect slice of egg, like a giant eye. Our aunties and grandma flitted around the tables like butterflies going from flower to flower. They perked up the lettuces or rearranged the tomatoes and set slices of meatloaf so they looked perfect. When Grandma and the aunties took off their aprons, we all knew it was time to gather at the table. We all held hands. Uncle Waylon said the blessing. Then everyone sat down and dove into the food, piling it high on their plates, some as high as haystacks. My brother Richie was sitting with some older girl that came with our older cousins. He was acting silly, and I could tell he liked one of them. Embarrassing. When we thought we couldn't eat anymore, Grandma and my aunties put their aprons back on and started getting all of the pies and cakes from the kitchen. There was something magical about my grandma and her sisters this day, like they knew something they weren't telling. I did wonder how Grandma was going to catch lightning in a jar, and every so often I'd stop her and ask her how. She'd just smile and say, "Easy, someday you'll do it too." After we ate, it was time for our annual baseball game. My dad and uncles against us kids. "Batter up," my dad called out as my cousin Billy stepped up to home plate. Luckily, he was on our team. He could hit anything. When he was out at field, he'd leap into the air and make impossible catches. "That kid can jump higher than a cow's back," our uncles used to say. First pitch out, Billy hit the ball so hard it clean disappeared. We thought we saw lightning as it hit the sky. Maybe the lightning was on its way. Was that what Grandma was going to catch in a jar? "I'm going to be a Detroit Tiger someday," Billy said that day. We all knew that he most certainly would. Okay, I'm noticing that Patricia talks a lot about her relationships with her cousins. She's talking about her relationships with her grandma. Food is an important part of this family reunion and this gathering, as is this baseball game. So take a moment and think about what connections you are making. Have you ever had an experience like this with your family or other adults, maybe in your neighborhood? Maybe you've had a block party? Take some time and think about that. Now turn and tell your learning buddy what you're thinking about your experience having a family gathering or a block party with your friends or neighbors. Rafa, originally I was thinking about the family reunion that I talked about where we all wore matching clothes, but now I'm thinking about the food and the games, and this reminds me of the block party we had it was about a year and a half ago, where we got a permit to close down our street, and all of the neighbors got together back when we could do that, and we brought food, and someone rented a big bouncy house. We were playing games in the street. We had jump ropes, and we were doing double dutch contests. It was really, really fun. Now, let's keep reading, learning about Patricia's experience and how she had a real life experience like this and turned it into a story. I'm still wondering about this lightning in a jar thing. Next, it was time for croquet, the biggest game of the day, which our uncles kept interrupting with friendly quarrels about bent hoops, crooked wickets, and wanting to take reshots. We had bag races, watermelon seed spitting contests, and rides on Grandpa's draft horse too, until Grandpa waved a yardstick in the air. All of us kids dropped what we were doing and ran to the milk shed. We all knew it was time to get measured. We did this every year. I liked looking at the marks of my grandma and our sisters and brothers on the same doorway. What a special memory. Some shorter than mine. Hard to imagine that once they were little, just like me. Now this is making me think about how in my house, in my kitchen, we have a doorway and we measure my boys every couple months. And it's really fun to see how much they've grown since they were little. So Patricia has a similar experience to that. So I wonder if I could include that in a piece of my writing. Aunt Bertha had gone to the house and fetched all the family portrait albums. The aunties showed us old brown photos and pointed. That was their father, who saved souls as a circuit preacher when he wasn't farming. Look, there were their favorite horses. Their eyes sparkled when they showed us their wedding pictures. And the aunties were all married in their mother's parlor. The parlor is the living room. The aunties were all married in their mother's parlor. I watched Grandma to see if she would summon the lightning from the sky. Now this is really interesting, this photo, or this picture, because you can see that Patricia Polacco has illustrated it. She's drawn it, but those photographs are real photographs embedded. They're not drawings. And it's just amazing how bright the illustrations are that she's drawn and colored, and then the contrast of the black and white photos of the real photographs. Why do you think Patricia decided to include real photographs in this illustration? Take some think time. Turn and tell your learning buddy what you're thinking. Rafa, I think Patricia Polacco wanted us to really understand that this book is about a real event that really happened when she was a little girl. And in fact, I'm looking at the names, and I see in one of these photos, it says Bertha. This is a real photo of her real Aunt Bertha. This must be a really special story that she chose to include her real family photos and the event as proof that it really happened. It's time for our family photo, Aunt Iva called out as she jumped up and grabbed her camera. We kids didn't like this part because it meant that any dirt on our faces would be scraped off with the hanky that our aunties had spit on, especially mine. Everybody smile, Aunt Iva sang out. They really don't look happy about that. After this, the kids started to chant, "Stories, stories, stories, please." Grandma and her sisters and brothers started quiet and slow. Uncle Ernest told about milking cows faster than lightning. Grandma told about how she and her sisters walked 7 miles to a one-room schoolhouse over on Lock Center, and how each of them taught in that same school. Then there was some quiet as Aunt Iva started fanning herself. We knew she was getting ready. I remember the day I was driving the rig home from school when I came upon a real rattlesnake. We all looked at one another. Rattlers weren't around these parts, so we knew this was going to be good. That thing was all coiled up and shaking its tail. Not a rattling sound, something more like a loud buzz. Bellhorse just stood there and shook. "What did you do, Aunt Iva?" we asked. "Well, sir, I stepped out of the buggy, took my umbrella, and put it smack in the middle of that snake all coiled up. It just wrapped around that umbrella. I knew if it struck me, I was a goner." We all leaned forward. So I picked it up, gave the umbrella a sharp jerk, and flung that snake into Cecil Potter's field. Then I jumped into my buggy and galloped home like the wind. All of my aunts and uncles laughed, then a flicker of heat lightning sprang out of the horizon. Now this is making me think about a time when my brother and my sisters and I were visiting my grandma on my dad's side, and her sisters were there, and they were all in their 70s at the time. And they started telling stories about when they were little and all the trouble they used to get in. And it just made me laugh to think about my grandma getting into trouble as a young adult. That was a really special time to see my grandma from a whole different perspective. I wonder if Patricia is having a similar experience where she can't believe that her aunt would do that with a snake and be so brave. The air didn't move. Was some magic going to happen? Aunt Ada fluttered her fan. We knew she was getting ready to top Aunt Iva's story. Have I ever told you children about the time I took a ride in the first newfangled moto car here in our county? No, we kids sang out. Well, sir, it belonged to Eldie Dunkel. My pa didn't approve of him. No, never. No how. He's a wild kid, he'd rave. Don't never want to see you with the likes of him. Then one day, when I was walking home from prayer meeting, he rolled up next to me driving the shiniest machine I'd ever seen. Aunt Ada stopped and fanned some more. What happened, Aunt Ada? We begged. Well, Aunt Ada crowed, I climbed right into that thing. Eldie shifted that contraption, making a terrible sound, and that roadster almost leapt right out from under us. It went so fast my hat blew clean off. We were going almost 40 miles an hour. We raced up Moyer Road, hurtled around Evie Peters' barn, almost flattened at the Bender sisters' fruit stand, then howled down Dietz Road. We gasped. And when we skidded to a stop in front of Pa's barn, there he was, just a-standing there. She stopped again and fanned herself. What did he do, Aunt Ada? What happened? We all pleaded. Not a blessed thing, she answered, and laughed so hard she almost dropped her lemonade. Heat lightning flickered again. There was a low rumble of thunder off in the distance. We're about to get the answer to our lightning in a jar. Now I watched my grandmother. She smiled and gave me a wink. It was her turn. Well, sir, Grandma began, I was but a girl out plowing, helping Pa with the fields. His team could pull those rows straight as an arrow. When the team reared and bolted and dragged me halfway down the field before I could free myself. When I stood up, there was a fierce and clattering roar in the sky above me. We all leaned toward her. It was like thunder and fierce lightning. She stopped and sipped her lemonade. What was it, Grandma? We kids begged. I looked up, waiting for the lightning. Well, sir, I couldn't believe what I was seeing above me. We crawled close to her knee. There, like a giant dragonfly, with two sets of wings, growling and roaring, pitching and rolling, spewing foul-smelling smoke. She leaned forward. It was the first ever flying machine in the state of Michigan. We all clapped with delight. That would have been a perfect time for the lightning to come. But it didn't, and it was almost dark. I whispered to Grandma, what about the lightning in a jar? She adjusted her glasses and gave me a look. Have the last rays of sun left the grass? She asked. I looked real hard. Yes, I said. Then sit down, child. Aunt Bertha brought a wicker laundry basket full of glass canning jars and set them at Grandma's feet. Many years ago, when your aunties and uncles and I were but children, our grandpa showed us what I am about to show you. She leaned down and touched the grass, cupping something in her hands. She thought for a moment and then said, shadows lengthen, the day near done, birds fly low at setting sun. Stars will rise from earth below, in these hands their light will glow. Come up, lightning, come up, stars, we'll snatch you up in these here jars. She blew into her hands and let something go. It flew for a moment, then landed deep in the grass. We watched and watched, but nothing was happening. Low thunder rumbled just above us. Look, my cousin Billy called out. A small burst of starlight puffed up out of the grass, then more and more drifted up out of the carpet of lawn beneath our feet. Fireflies, we called out. We grabbed the jars and the dash was on to capture lightning and put it in a jar. Grandma gave me a knowing look and smiled. What was the lightning?
Lightning bugs.
Lightning bugs or fireflies. This reminds me of another story that we've read. Mm-hmm. When everyone had gone home that night, Grandma and I sat on the porch swing together. We looked at the flickering jar, and even though fireflies are common in Michigan on summer nights, never had I seen so many as that night. As long as I live, I'll believe that somehow Grandma called them up with her stories and her magic. That night seems so long ago, but the reunion is here again. My family is arriving now. My heart is racing. We'll eat scrumptious Jell-O and meatloaf, play baseball and croquet, spit watermelon seeds, and scrawl new measurements on my milk house door jamb. We'll look at photo albums, we'll laugh at some and cry at others. We'll remember the stories, how Grandma saw the first flying machine and Aunt Iva conquered the rattler. We'll talk about Billy and how he should have been a Detroit Tiger, but gave his life for his country in a war far away. Then, when the sun is low and the shadows long, we'll all sit and fan ourselves in the shade of the maple trees. Only a new crop of children will gather at my knees. My father, my grandmother, my aunts and uncles are no longer here. So now it is we who must tell their stories and bring them back for fleeting moments. Then I will show the children the magic that my grandma showed me. I'll call the stars from beneath their feet, and as they rise in the warm night air, these children will leap as high as a cow's back to gather them up. I'll send them home with full bellies, tired bones, and flickering jars in their laps. Their hearts will be overflowing, full of lightning, but put there by folks who loved them even before they were born. Grandma knew this well. She also knew that someday they would tell their children about all of us and of the magic nights when we caught lightning in a jar. Do you recognize? That's Patricia Polacco. Do you remember the photo that we looked at the first day that we started studying her? So, this is her story of growing up with such an amazing experience as a family reunion and her interactions with all of the wonderful adults around her. Now, third graders, it is your time to think about your important memories, and you're going to use page 53 in your ELA packet to think about what was the event, what's the memory associated with it, and what's the amount of time that passed. So thinking about when lightning comes in a jar, the reunion was only a couple of hours in the afternoon and into the evening, but this story spans many years because Patricia Polacco talks about the event she experienced as a child and how she was able to recreate that event as an adult. So think about your important memories, and for your independent writing, you're going to complete this graphic organizer for at least 2 memories that you have, and begin to write about them in your writing notebook. You can also keep adding to your reading log, noticing while you're doing your independent reading, the interactions between the children and the adults in your book, and think about how are they similar or different to the interactions that Patricia Polacco writes about. Then you can send us your ideas. We can't wait to hear about your amazing experiences and the adults in your life that you share them with. Mr. Kevin, can you tell our third graders how they can send us their writing?
Absolutely. You can send them to TV Classroom at tacoma.k12.wa.us, or you can put them in the mail and send them to TV Classroom, 601 South 8th Street, Tacoma, Washington, 98405.
Thank you so much. All right, third graders, this is the time when we get to have our affirmation. We get to say positive things about ourselves before we go off to do our independent work. Today, your affirmation is, I can do hard things, because you can. Even when they seem really, really, really hard, you can take a deep breath, remind yourself your affirmation, practice saying it out loud with me now. I can do hard things. Excellent job today, third graders. Thank you so much for working so hard with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you back here next time in our TV classroom. Bye.
Hey kids, we want to see your work. Just send your pictures and your stories to TV Classroom, 601 South 8th Street, Tacoma, Washington, 98405.